Okay, Chris Speaks here with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast, and we got Republican Lieutenant Governor candidate here with us tonight, Dr. Stuart Tankersley. Dr. Tankersley, for people who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you want to be Lieutenant Governor?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. My family's been here in Alabama for longer than the state's been around, and proud Alabamian. And yeah, I went to graduated Auburn with a history degree. Then joined the Army during the Gulf War, and in '91, and as a Cav Scout, did air assault, and then 2 years later, a year and a half later, got to go to officer candidate school. I was graduated officer candidate school in on Saturday and started medical school at UAB on Monday. And then I stayed in the Guard and was deployed 3 times. And then I was promoted to colonel in my 18th year of commissioning, which is the quickest you can rise up to that rank, just simply doing my job best way I could throughout my career. And after that, I was allowed to serve for 5 years on a Continental Command staff that was a massive undertaking, hardest thing I did in the military. And it was for 5 years, and learned a lot about big structural organizations and how big structures can work properly. And then also, coincident with that, I was a family medicine doc. I did OB residency for 2 years. Then my wife and I did a year of missionary training, and then got into family medicine. And after I got off the ethics commission, I was on 13 to 17. And 18, I was recruited to run for the state house. And I said, I got 3 kids at home, and I want nothing to do with that snake pit. And didn't ever think if I was going to go into politics, that was my chance. But then COVID came around, and I was the leading voice of sanity for the last 6 years in our state. I've been on the speaking circuit, if you will, from around the country, from Alaska to Florida, and spoken to tens of thousands of people in all those talks. And it was very, very unfortunate what happened to our country and our state with the lack of true, honest leadership that didn't deal forthrightly with what was going on, and actually revealed not only the corruption in our governments, but also in my profession. And then a couple of years ago, I was asked to consider running for lieutenant governor. And I thought, well, at first, no, if I ever wanted to do that, that opportunity is come and gone. But then I started thinking, praying about it, and talking to a lot of people, and I realized Alabama has such horrible corruption. When I was on the ethics commission, we were always in the worst tier of corrupt states in the country. And I realized that I think I've got hopefully have a solution to help the corruption. And what I mean by that, I talked to former Senator Attorney General Jeff Sessions a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this. And corruption, when I went on the ethics commission, I was kind of naive. I thought, corruption's illegal. No. There's criminal corruption, but there's also public interest corruption. And that's what we're trapped in our state largely. I think that if you look at the 12 or so big mules that run our state, that make all the big decisions, to the detriment of the people in the state. And obviously the clearest example in our lifetime was COVID, and what the Hospital Association and UAB did to the rest of us. We're not even close to being out of the woods from all that stuff. But anyways, I figured out, I think I got a way to help the corruption. And when I say that, I believe that the vast majority of the Republicans that run for office have genuine good interest, but they're like the doctors. How it is that I was in the less than 1% of doctors that got COVID right. I'm no smarter than the other ones. It's really spiritual. But the point is, 2 or 3 years ago, I started recognizing I was angry at my peers, the other doctors. And so I had to repent and take a good attitude toward them, because it's the right thing. Well, that's the attitude I'm going to take to the senators that are in there. As you know, the lieutenant governor is the presiding officer of the Senate. And I think that the vast majority of those people are trying to do the right thing, but they're just stuck in a broken system. And as the lieutenant governor, the presiding officer, I will every week give a podcast to tell the people of the state what's going on. And what I mean by that is the lieutenant governor, people that run for the lieutenant governor are trying to climb the ladder, a lot of them, to get to the next rung. And I'm not trying to do that because the state people are really hurting. The affordability issues and the health issues are really important. And it's a ton more important. Both those issues are a lot more important than one person's political ambitions. And so, as the presiding officer who's going to sit there with a ringside seat and tell people on a podcast every week what they're doing to us, that's going to put pressure on them to start looking at the heart, turning the heart of the Senate back to the heart of the people. Because, and there have been several examples of it in recent years, but there were several big ones in this legislative session, to the point that they have lost interest or lost sight of why they are serving. It's not to further the nest of their own political careers, but also not to further the nest just of the big mules that run things. And I think that idea, I haven't heard of another idea that makes sense as to how we can change the system that's so broken in our state. And what's so unfortunate, by the way, is that the vast majority of people in Montgomery just think this is normal, when Alabama is not normal in the level of corruption we have. Long answer. Hope it answered a lot of questions.
On that corruption front, we've had at last count $26 million of gambling interest money from DraftKings, FanDuel, 24/7 Sports, all these out of state and in some cases out of country gambling deals flooding into this election. I mean, they're in state house races, state senate races, all up and down the dial. I mean, just all over the place. I mean, they're in some cases they're taking on conservative incumbents. In some cases, they're backing, less conservative incumbents. They're taking on, in open races, they're picking a side, even when both sides are pro gambling. What is wrong with our system that, a corporation from outside the state can say, well, I'm going to put my thumb on this scale and there's nothing these, rubes in Alabama can do about it.
Well, yeah, I don't know if we can do anything about their contributing, but the way in which they're supposedly reportedly hiding it is wrong and may very well be illegal. But to the point, the major point is anybody can gamble anytime they want on their phone. It might not be able to do it legally, but the fact is anybody can. So it's really a moot issue. And the guaranteed monies that all the state's supposedly going to get from these gambling interests is not anywhere near what they always promise. A couple of months ago up in Tennessee, they were 100 million short of what they were expecting from their lottery, and so they had to shore it up from the general fund, I think I read. But it's all a lie. Number one, they produce nothing of value. Number two is they take, number one is the damage, the moral damage they do to the people, especially the poor. One of my opponents in the very first forum that was held it was just luck of the draw. He was the first one questioned. He was asked about gambling, and he said, well, I'm really, a libertarian. Well, what are you doing running a Republican primary? But anyways, I'm a libertarian, and I know it's awful, really bad for the poor. It's preying on the poor, but I say let the people have a chance. That is not moral leadership, number one, because it is really bad for the poor, especially. It's bad for everybody, but it's really bad for the poor. And in a way, the state to leverage the morally leverage their authority over the poor people to their detriment is. I just can't comprehend why anybody would think that's okay. But anyways, so number one, it's a mood issue. Number two is it's morally wrong. Number three, there are a dozen big mules that run our state. and we can get into a lot of the details about that. But there are a lot of they make all the big decisions, and the international gambling cartels. And by the way, I was at a meeting at lunch today with Rusty Glover, who's
Yeah,
down in
Rusty's really catching it hard.
$3 million are being spent against him in that state Senate race. And I had heard there was 37 million, not 27 million, but either way, it's
I've heard
exorbitant.
it's up to 42.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my numbers might be a few weeks behind.
Yeah,
but
I've
it's
heard it's up to 42.
obscene. It is obscene. And so these good guys that are trying to do the right thing are just getting pummeled with deceptive ads, at least, if not outright lies. And what the problem is going to be, these 12 big mules, and the Indians are one of the 12. But if we give these international gambling cartels access to gambling, to any form, and Chief Justice Parker has said this multiple times, once you legally allow any form of gambling, you open the gates to all other forms. And these big mules, these gambling entities know this, and they're corrupt. And with them comes a lot of other horrible things, trafficking and drugs and horrible things. But the state's not going to get the money it's supposed to be getting from it. And a lot of the money is going to go out of the state to these entities. But what they're going to have to do, and this clearly is an example of how they play ball, they're going to have more money than the other 11 big mules combined. And they will make Paul Hubbard of yesteryear and AEA look like kindergartners compared to their ruthless tactics. We cannot, in any way, shape, or form, give these people a foothold for 1 minute, because it is selling our kids and our corrupt political system even more down the river. And we've got to correct corruption, not invite more of it in spades.
Dr. Tankersley, you mentioned COVID a while ago, and you being in the 1% of the doctors. I remember when this first broke out. My psychiatrist was one of the guys saying this is just the biggest hoax he's ever seen. And when I started paying really attention to it I got kicked off podcasts and stuff because asking questions. So, what was this? I mean, was this a conspiracy?
Oh, it was the ultimate conspiracy, meaning a real conspiracy. It is the greatest catastrophe in our country's history by far. I mean, the greatest. Worse than slavery because it clearly included that. Worse than abortion because it clearly included that. And the utter contempt that they had for us. I mean, your mother is dying in the hospital. You don't get to see her. We say, who in the world? And nobody's paying a price for it. Now, today I can't wait to go watch the video, but today I heard there was a Senate hearing about the abuses during COVID. But David Morans was Fauci's right-hand guy for 25 years, and he was indicted 2 years ago. And my hope and prayer is that the investigations into him are going to reveal the outright fraud that's going to allow people to destroy those drug companies that did this to us. Because supposedly the 1986 Act that gave them immunity doesn't immune them if there is fraud, and there was rampant fraud. But it was a conspiracy of conspiracies, no question. And Dr. Robert Malone has done a series on this. Guess who took over planning for this type of event in 2001? DARPA, an agency inside of the War Department of War. This thing has been planned for decades. And it was nothing but evil stacked on evil. As my preacher says, Jesus has never been and never will be a part of a lie. And COVID was one deadly lie stacked on another one. And we're not out of the woods from it. Those COVID shots are going to be generationally harmful. And so please, anybody, consider detoxing and doing something about it, because these self-replicating things are just awful.
Along those lines, a few weeks ago, I forwarded you an article that I got, from a Stacker, which is, just provides online content for our website. And in it they said these COVID babies, the little babies that were, infants or were just born at the beginning of the COVID deal, 20, 20, 21, 22, they're showing up in schools now. They're like 5 years old and they're really struggling to learn reading and mathematics like you normally expect a kindergartner or a first grader to do.
I'm not surprised by that a bit. I was one of the 7 authors on the definitive uh, journal article, Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, March of 2023. It came out, and we looked at 18 different metrics. There was menstrual abnormalities, and there was a 1,190 fold increased risk of those. Then we looked at the 17 OB metrics to include dangers to the mother and the child. And the astronomical increase, 57-fold increase in miscarriages, 38-fold increase in intrauterine death, and then all these abnormalities with the babies. This is absolute. And then not only that, you add on top of the learning dysfunction that they put us through, the NEA and the AEA put us through in our state for 2 years. And all of these children, not just the ones that were injured directly by the shots in utero, but all of these children's learning have fallen off the cliff. And it is so unbelievable we did this, and we sat back and let them do it. And they're going to do it again. Robert Redfield, the former CDC director, says they have over 80 in the hopper. And Dr. Robert Redfield is an expert because he has been fighting Fauci. He was fighting Fauci for 20 years against gain of function crap. And so this is absolute evil in a way we could never have considered. This was a conspiracy like no other.
Dr. Tankersley, so going in that, was it something that came out of what is it? The
Wuhan?
Yeah, would it come out of there, or do you think it was come out of our government, or were they involved together in cohorts with this? Was this like a mind control thing?
Well, yes. Well, it was everything. It wasn't just mind. It was dominant. Everything was evil about it. So Ralph Barrick and Peter Daszak out of the University of North Carolina, they just yesterday I read an article that one of them was kicked off of being able to receive any more grants from our government. But North Carolina, University of North Carolina, is where this thing was created. And this isn't my conjecture. This is proven. Dr. Barrick was a year or two ago removed from being able to receive funds for 3 years, I think, and now they're gone. They can't receive them. But yes, this was created through the University of North Carolina, and I used to like the Tar Heels and didn't like Duke. University of North Carolina is my least favorite college team these days. So it came out of there, and they offshored it to the Wuhan lab, and this was exactly what they knew they were creating. This isn't conjecture. There was a 430-page congressional report that came out in December of 24, and it goes into all the details of this, a lot of the details of it. But when David Morins has to sit and testify, it's going to be groundbreaking. It's going to make everybody's jaws drop, because there is no doubt Anthony Fauci was in charge of, and Bill Gates were in charge of this catastrophe from the beginning.
Turning back to the state of Alabama, last year we had, that just horrific deal down in Bibb County where like 10 people were arrested for trafficking, in some cases their own children, in a dungeon out in the woods. I mean, literally with chains and drugs. It's, if you did this as a movie, it's unbelievable. Um, that was one deal, and somehow they were able to find clientele to come and spend money doing the things they were doing. How big of a problem, I mean, this is conjecture on our parts, is this in the state? Because somehow these people found buyers, and there are buyers that are out there looking for this sort of crap. Um, it sort of boggles my mind at the level of evil we're dealing with here.
Right. Going from one evil to another. I've talked to Jared Hudson, who's running for Senate on the trail, a couple of times about this because his ministry, his job, the foundation he has goes after this. And that actually, I'm going to team that with what he was talking about with gambling interests that come together. But it is, I really think and hope and pray that I'm right, that in the last 10, maybe almost 10 months, maybe a year, that there's a great awakening in our country we haven't seen in over 100 years. Because the level of evil that COVID and our government exposed itself as, and then the level of evil that we allowed for in the trafficking of children across the border. J.J. Carroll was a former director of the border in San Diego, and he has written a riveting book. And he asserts, in the book that came out a year ago, 54 million people have come into our country in the last 18 years. And they are trafficking these young people, and they're raping all these girls that come up through Central America. How the Biden administration, the Democrats, can look in the mirror is unconscionable, because this is an epic catastrophe that they have allowed for and encouraged and paid for. I remember when at the 100-day, when Trump had taken seat at his 100th day news conference, he had all of his cabinet around, and he got around to my favorite one, RFK Jr., head of the world's largest agency, HHS. And he said, and it was just jaw-dropping, he said, "We are no longer in the business of trafficking 350,000 children." That's what our government under Biden and Obama have been doing to these people. So this level of trafficking 350,000 children, we don't have that many children in the whole state of Alabama. Well, we might. Let's see. No, it'd be about that.
No, not in a state of 5 million.
Right. It'd be about, yeah, it'd be
We'd all have to have like
all
4
the
kids at the
children in
house.
Alabama being trafficked. That's the level of evil we're talking about. And I mean, we just got to have a hard nose. This victimhood crap that we went through with the BLM, and that type thing that made us that we're on the side of right, be on our heels, no more. That level of it, they just covered for a level of evil that we could never have appreciated before. But now the eyes are being opened. Now we know who we're dealing with, and we need to really deal with these people in a very expeditious way.
Particularly, I want to go with the COVID thing again. I could interview you forever on this, but back when this was going on, I used to get the numbers from the CDC every week, and I made a Facebook post called the Scamdemic Numbers Crunch, and I was going over the people infected. So, and you probably know the numbers a lot better than me. When you looked at the people that the CDC had projected to die, and I think they go 300,000, one way or another. And I know that we didn't do autopsies in that time. Were there really this many people that was dying of COVID, or did those deaths fall in?
Yeah, they said 1.1 million died from COVID just in the United States, and we out of 185 countries in the world, according to Johns Hopkins, who was tracking this. And by the way, Chris, this is the first time we met. And when I got thrown in the deep end in February of 20, I was put on a working group with the 5 colonel doctors in the National Guard, and we were put on an unpaid working group for the governor to come up with contingency plans. And I dove in like it was my 4th deployment, and in a way, I'm still in my deployment. But in the first 4 or 5 months, I didn't average 4 hours of sleep a night, and it was 4 years before I really counted it up. And after 4 years of this crap, this evil, I had not done something on COVID 23 days. I mean, this was a deployment in the worst of environments for me. To your point, Dr. So supposedly 1.1 million people have died from COVID. By the way, I treated at least a couple of thousand, 0 deaths. Praise the Lord. 3 hospitalizations of 3 days or less. Praise the Lord. Eminently treatable illness. According to Dr. Peter McCullough, and he invited me in March of 22 to do a podcast with him, and Dr. Jordan Vaughn and I still do it every week with him. According to him, a year ago or so, he said that he thinks that 220,000 Americans died from COVID, really, not from the ridiculous treatment protocols. He thinks well over, and I agree, at least 95% of people should not have died from COVID. But yeah, I think that the protocols they put into place and their unwillingness to listen, it was baked into the whole scheme what they were going to do. By the way, in the first week of October of 20, the governor's office asked me to be their representative as Dr., not Colonel Tankersley, on the COVID vaccine working group. By the way, I do not call it a vaccine because it's not a vaccine. They didn't even apply for it as a vaccine. But the COVID shots, I was put on that. And with the invitation for that, I was given the 75-page playbook. It was called the playbook. And I ripped that thing apart. I took a day off work in 18, 19 hours. I ripped that thing apart, finding holes in it. I treated it in the military. We call it a warning order, where the command gives you, hey, look, we got this thing coming. Here's our plan of action. So you rip it apart looking for holes. And it was full of holes. It was all bunk. And it was in the military, you'd have been fired immediately if you'd have been on the working group and you'd have come up with this scheme.
I was in the Army too.
Oh, cool. What the MOS?
I was, that time it's called a 77 Foxtrot. I was an engineer, and then we got cross-leveled into 21 Charlie at that time, which was an engineer when I went to Afghanistan.
Oh, cool. Thanks for doing it, man. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you offline about all that. Yeah, I was boys. Anyways, saw some really interesting things, lifetime lessons. But so everything they did, I can only think of 2 things our government did right during COVID. Number one, in February of 20, Trump cut off air travel to China, and he got excoriated for it. That was number one. Number 2 was the antibodies, infusion antibodies. But everything else our country did and the world lost our ever-loving mind. We have no idea what freedom is in this country, obviously, and the Constitution doesn't matter because they threw the Bill of Rights right out the window and people said, well, I guess okay. But it was just horrendous, and it still is.
I hate to beat on this COVID thing to death, but I just looked at the Worldometer numbers, and they've got 1.2 million American dead. That's the most of any country on the planet. 21,100 something dead Alabamians. Dr. Fauci and the CDC told doctors there was no treatment for COVID, that you're to wait on the vaccine. How many of the 21,000 that officially died from that would probably still be here had doctors had been given carte blanche to, hey, there's probably a treatment, go find it.
Amen. Like I mentioned a while ago, I think that Peter McCullough is right. 95% of people should not have died. But what's worse, and I agree with Paul Alexander. Dr. Paul Alexander was on Trump's initial in 2020 COVID task force. In 2022, he said that and it's not, this isn't conjecture, this is fact, provable. I mean, it is what it is because it meets the criteria. The virus qualifies as a bioweapon. Clear. There's that isn't I think it is. No, here are the criteria, it meets it. But like Dr. Paul Alexander said in 2022, I think, the virus bioweapon was designed to bring about the ultimate bioweapon, which was the shot. And I agree with that. These shots, if I could have, I may have mentioned this to you before, if I could have every doctor in America watch one 4-minute clip, it was Dr. Gary Scott being interviewed in a sworn testimony in Senate by Senator Ron Johnson. last September, I think. This is a Stanford infectious disease expert who had no idea how the shots were designed. And it is shameful beyond a measure because everything their government did was just so wrong. And it's just by the grace of the Lord I got it right. But the fact is, it is what it is. And so what are we going to do? We're going to allow these people that are in government to just sweep it under the rug? Not on my watch. We're going to take hard lessons learned. We're going to do a real after action review, and we're going to have to address what in the world we did and why.
So, Dr. Tankersley, I mean, I remember the president just got eviscerated in the media when he did not want to shut down the government, wanted to open it back up. So, was the president right all along that we should have never, that this was wrong, what Fauci came in there wanting to close everything down?
No, I think his instincts were that, but he's been advocating for the shots still. Trump.
The president?
Yeah. John Rich tells a great story about that. But the fact is that, he's been hoodwinked, and who knows if and how much money, if his family made money off of Moderna or Pfizer or one of them or not. But he has not been our friend regarding COVID. Now Biden was much worse. I don't think Trump, had things been counted rightly in 2020, that Trump, I think he won. My simple question on the campaign trail this year is, somebody asked about election integrity. I said, does anybody in the room think that Biden beat Obama's totals by 12 million? And I've not seen any person think that.
During a pandemic where half the states were locked down, more people voted than ever.
That's right. This ain't conspiracy theories. These are the ultimate conspiracies. But anyways, so Trump has not been our ally. Now, I think the greatest person he hired on his cabinet is RFK Jr. And what he is trying to do is what I want to help further here in Alabama, because this goes to one of my three issues, which is health. The public health apparatus in Alabama has failed us for generations, and what they did during COVID is unforgivable. And it's time we change. We've got to radically change. Now, what does that mean? Number one, get rid of Scott Harris, who has been an utter failure in every regard. And we're going to do that who knows if we'll do that next year, but it's going to be up to Tuberville or the next governor to decide. But the idea is, a year and a half ago, I was recruited by RFK to come work for him when he got it confirmed as HHS secretary, and I didn't want to move to DC, but I've been talking to him, and they're coming up with these wonderful programs in how to educate people on what right looks like and how to help yourself rather than continue to poison yourself with the government's complicity, whether it's the food or water or air or whatever the government's doing to us. But education is going to be central to this effort. And I am looking forward to being the guy that helps push these programs through. And what's so wonderful about it is it's a win-win, obviously, for everybody with everybody. It doesn't matter how much money you have if you don't have good health. And so we're going to have opportunities for people that make a lot more money because they're going to be healthier, number one. And that should always be the goal, is making people healthier. But it's going to help the ag community, because part of Maha is to promote local food, local sourcing. And on the campaign trail the last month or two of the ag commissioner candidates have picked up on Maha as key parts of their campaign. It's a win-win for everybody except for big ag and big pharma.
Dr. Tankersley, we've had a lot of discussion in recent years about rural hospitals. I think you can look, and we've had several hospitals close, and usually before they close, there's no obstetrician in the county, so you can't actually have a baby delivered, in the hospital. There's no heart surgeon, so you can't have a heart bypass surgery done in your local county hospital. In some cases, there's no orthopedist, or he's just down there one day a week. So if you break a bone, you're driving 50 miles, from some of these counties to where you can actually get a bone set or something. Um, do we need to rethink how we're doing this? Because what we're doing, and I mean, UAB is really cool in the center of Birmingham, but it getting bigger and everybody driving farther. Does that model work for half of Alabama?
I think of course it doesn't, but that's not the design of these big mules. The design of the big mules, well, backing up, Obamacare was meant, according to its author, was meant to bring about socialized medicine. That was the whole point of Obamacare. And there are two mechanisms by which you force socialized medicine on people. Number one is you destroy the middle class, which the Democrats gladly are doing, and with the complicity of some Republicans. But then the second thing you do is you create an environment, or culture, or a community, or a region where there is one dominant monster that that delivers the health care. And that's what's going on. And then to your point about rural health not having any access, what they did at the last hour of the legislative session that I wrote about in 1819, actually, but I wrote an article about it. And one of the main senators has apologized because he didn't understand the game that he was getting trapped into. But what they did, Dr. Larry Stutz, a state senator from Northwest Alabama, one of my heroes, stood there and said, "What are you people doing? Look at this bill that we're approving here." And they tricked him, and it was wrong. But what they did, part of the big beautiful bill last July was a $50 billion gift to rural America for health care. And Alabama, each state had to put forth a plan, a scheme. Alabama's was clearly a scheme that they had to present to HHS. And HHS didn't like Alabama's that much because we got the least of the states surrounding us, which was still a big chunk of money, $203 million a year for 5 years, so over $1 billion. And this was to go to promote rural health. Well, guess what? I bet, I don't know for sure, but I bet when it comes out that it's going to be UAB. But in the law that they passed in the very last hour of the session, they gave UAB the right to create monopolies. It came out of the House Judiciary Committee to the Senate because it came out because they were looking to give them immunity from monopolistic authority. In fact, 3 times in the bill, it said, I think it was House Bill 406 or something like that, or 604, maybe I went dyslexic there for a second. But anyways, in the bill, it says 3 times can remove competition. And do you think that's going to help the local provider or the local community hospital? Heck no, it's going to suck a lot of money back up into Birmingham, though. And that's a classic example of what Dr. or Senator Sessions was talking about when he talked about public interest corruption. Not criminal corruption, because they just got legal authority to do it, but public interest corruption, no doubt. And this is all designed to bring about single-payer health care where we're all dependent on the government to let us do what they authorize us to do only. It's just a whole broken system. And I talked yesterday, I was up in Birmingham at a big luncheon campaigning. And one of the well-known state legislators up there, when I explained this to her afterwards, was like, wow, I didn't know and understand. She hadn't read my article. And she was like, wow. So that's the trap I'm talking about these legislators being in, who are well-intended, but they're not told the whole story by the big mules. So we all have to suffer the consequences. I'm sorry it took so long to explain that, but it was a very important issue.
Dr. Tankersley, you mentioned Maha, and I have a friend who's a cardiologist out of Cal Berkeley, and he tells me I'm headed for major heart disease. But I want to get your opinion on something. Back in January, there's a guy who I follow on social media, Dr. Ken Berry. He pushes a carnivore diet. And I went on a carnivore diet. I've lost 32 pounds. I'm almost 50 years old. I have a six pack now. I didn't have a six pack when I was in the Army. My blood pressure is 115 over 70. I'm sleeping better than I ever have. I have more energy. Have the medical community lied to us about how bad saturated fats are for us?
Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, the medical community has lied to you about almost everything, and I hate that. I mean, I was a victim of it. I mean, I hate what I did to my patients and doing what I thought was right. Of course, it was just reprehensible. But the most important thing I think outside of the judiciary and outside of foreign policy that Trump has done was let RFK do his deal in some regards. And the most important thing he did on at the first week of January this year was flip the food chart. In the food chart that Biden and the FDA had created for decades, at the top was this crap, this sugars, the carbohydrates. Literally, on the box of Fruit Loops was a stamp of approval from the American Heart Association. According to our government, you are better off eating a bowl of Fruit Loops than a steak.
Mm-hmm.
So have they lied to us? Yes. And some people knew they were lying. Now, I just couldn't believe. I never bought into the idea that diabetics should eat a lot of carbs. I mean, it just didn't make any sense. And anyways, but yes, they've been lying. Why? Because the medical industrial complex wants more sick people, so they make more money.
Dr. Tankersley, we've had an issue that's, I mean, everybody wants like a poor child to get food. I mean, nobody wants to take food out of the mouths of needy children. But, um, we have a problem in this country of children having exorbitantly high levels of obesity, and where it's worse is on, you would think the poor children would be skinny from not getting enough food. They're actually fat from eating Fruit Loops and Cheerios and,
And we pay
cheese
for it.
puffs and all this crap with the EBT the money that we're spending, giving them. Do we need to put limits on what you can buy on your EBT card?
Well, of course, and I think that they did the right thing in blocking some of the candies and sodas off of the EBT this year in the session. But we need to do a lot more than just that. I mean, there is so you should restrict it. Some say 42, some say 71, or whatever foods that only the government's going to pay for that are healthy, and then train these mothers and fathers and the whole country on what right cooking looks like, food preparation looks like. We are in a death spiral in our country. We can't afford to continue down it. And diet is absolutely essential for it.
Dr. Tankersley, back to the meat. So, I was the doctor that I'm following. He says that, the animal fats, it has every nutrient, every vitamin that you have, that you don't need these plant-based foods. I mean, do you think that he's on the right track there?
Yeah, I've looked into these a little bit in the last couple of years, and Jordan Peterson's the guy that made me look into it a little bit a couple of years ago. But I think that the pro-inflammatory diets that we're so accustomed to the last couple of generations in our country have really got to be addressed. And so I don't, in general, don't like to paint with a broad brush. Now, I will say the COVID shots have always been and will always be evil. Don't make any allowances for that one. But you got to individualize it. I do think there is the anti-inflammatory benefits of the carnivore diet are pretty well established. I'm sure, there's going to be some tweaks to it. But that makes a lot of sense to people. I mean, to me, but I wouldn't paint it with a broad brush. Everybody just needs to go carnivore while people in the cattle industry and fishing poultry industry might like it. I don't think the evidence is that I've seen is there for that.
Dr. Tankersley, Alabama, you get out here in St. Clair County, you get out here in Walker County, you get out in Blount County, there's not a lot of crime. I mean, we have drugs and we got drug thefts and that sort of deal. But then when you look at the national rankings, we're like one of the most violent states there is. And a lot of that is the city of Montgomery, the city of Birmingham, Pritchard, Bessemer, about half of the city of Mobile. Um, we seem to have, insane levels of violent crimes in certain sections of our major cities.
Yeah, I think I'm going to throw a curve at you on the answer on one respect, but I am glad you brought this up because I've been in my family's been here forever. I mean, longer than it's been around. And I love Montgomery, but the leadership in Montgomery, if you want to call it that, has got to be addressed. And there will not be a lieutenant governor sitting number 2 in the state who has the better interest of Montgomery than I. Any candidate, I will have it as a big interest. And crime has got to be dealt with. And we've got to, going back to the earlier issue, we've got to save Jackson Hospital so that UAB doesn't come in and gobble it up a quarter on the dollar after all the leeches take from it. But crime has got to be dealt with. Now, what's interesting, and this is the curve, in the last 12 or so years, the level of testosterone in men in our country has gone down significantly. So wait a minute, what is going on? Well, in other words, that clearly indicates there is a promotion by those in authority in Montgomery and Pritchard and all these places. There is a promotion for this evil, for this violence. And then on top of that, you poison the kids' brains with the carbohydrates and things like that. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So RFK was talking on Rogan about this recently. Last year, they did a very short study that showed that, I think it was like a month or two long, and they took a prison, adult prison, and they gave one wing the regular crap, and they gave the other wing good crap, the good food. And in that wing, within, I think, one month or 6 weeks or so, there was a 40 to 50% drop in violence in that wing. They did the same thing in a youth facility, and it was a 70% drop. What we're doing to the kids' brains with this food that we are paying for, or really, even if we weren't paying for it, it's wrong. But we've got to allow people to get retrained on what right looks like. And you're going to be proud of me for this. I found a wonderful thing in, of all places, Montgomery Public Schools. I talked to one of the, if you hadn't heard about this, this is wonderful. Last 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in a campaign event. This lady who's on the school board came up to me. She's this grandmotherly figure who used to be a teacher. And in her district for the city public schools, she is creating, and she says they wanted to open up this year, but it's going to be next year, 27, fall of 27. They're going to open up a magnet school, first of its kind, a magnet school for ag. That is going to be tremendously successful, I believe, because they got, of course, this magnet school they're going to have to do the regular curriculum, but they're going to, and your kids don't have to go to it. It's not like a neighborhood school that's one they're stuck with. So it's a magnet school, and that kind of solutions makes a lot of sense to me. And all of this is going to feed into, number one, more accountability, and number two, it's going to allow more health, which is going to reduce the crime. But the leadership in Montgomery has got to be addressed forthrightly.
Dr. Tankersley, we've had you almost 55 minutes. I'd love to have you back on after the election and talk to you some more about this. Is there anything you'd like to say before we close this out?
Yeah, a couple of things. Just to thank you all so much again for having me. there are three big issues, as I've stated. The one is the accountability. I look forward to helping turn the Senate back to the people rather than the big mules. Two, I look forward to helping with affordability, whether it's health insurance and what Blue Cross. And I want to say, just take a caveat here, take this time to say about what's going on with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Unlike any other state in the country, Blue Cross has 90% of the private market. And they have, Senator Ron Johnson had a chart in a hearing that he had back in December. And it showed that since Obamacare went into effect in 2013, the increase in people's premiums for insurance has gone up on average across the country 167%. Maybe it's 169, but almost 170%. In Alabama, we're sixth highest in the country at 270%. And now the gas tax that has no cap, that impacts people's money wallet every week, every month, but it doesn't compare to the vast increase in people's health insurance, and they get less for the increase in premiums. And we've got to be forthright in addressing the chokehold that Blue Cross has in Alabama. It's really unfortunate. So affordability obviously is an issue. And by the way, with affordability, touching on the third issue, which is health. If you got good health, you got more money to spend. If you don't have good health, you're not, in a way, you might not ever have enough to spend. So health is going to be the third issue, and encouraging more of the Maha movement stuff is very important. And so, yeah, those are the three big issues. And then on the side, being a Montgomery guy, I look forward to helping with Jackson Hospital and using that as an example for other things around the state, as well as the crime issues that's so rampant and awful because of the poor leadership.
Dr.
Thank you so much
thank
for
you so
joining us.
much for speaking with us, and good luck next Tuesday.
Well, God bless you guys. Thank you so much again, and keep up the good work. Chris?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, look forward to talking to you about the